What if the place you go to for peace and solitude holds a secret so dark, so terrifying, that it changes you forever? Tonight, we dive into the story of a man who went on a simple fishing trip by a quiet river, only to come face to face with something unexplainable. This is not just a story. This is a real account, told by the person who lived through it, and it will leave you questioning what's lurking in the shadows. Imagine standing at the edge of a still river, its waters glistening under the moonlight. Everything seems calm, but suddenly something shifts. You're not alone. The quiet becomes suffocating, and then you see it. A light, faint at first, moving toward you through the darkness. And then, it disappears into the water, as if swallowed by the river itself. No sound, no movement, just gone. But the terror doesn't end there. As we unfold this harrowing tale, you'll find yourself gripped by fear, unable to look away. The lantern that vanished was just the beginning, and what happens next will chill you to the core. If you think you're ready, stay with us until the end, because what we reveal might just be the nightmare you never wanted to face. Before we dive deeper, hit the like button, subscribe to Sinister Stories, and share this video with those who dare to explore the unknown. But be warned, once you hear this story, you'll never look at rivers the same way again. The darkness is real, and it's waiting. The story begins in a place that seems like a haven for those seeking solitude, a series of calm lagoons and sandy banks by the town's main river. It's an area hidden away from civilization, surrounded by towering trees whose branches twist like skeletal hands reaching toward the sky. The sun barely filters through the dense canopy, casting eerie, elongated shadows on the ground. The air is thick, humid, and unnervingly still. This place, once considered peaceful, now feels like it's holding its breath, as if the very earth knows something is wrong. The only sound is the gentle lapping of the water against the shore, but even that seems muted, as though the river is hiding secrets beneath its placid surface. As night begins to fall, the darkness here feels different, heavier, almost suffocating. The once familiar paths seem to shift, disorienting even the most seasoned explorer. The protagonist arrives as usual, fishing gear in hand, seeking a moment of peace away from the chaos of daily life. But tonight, something is off. There's a weight in the air, an unshakable feeling of being watched. Every crack of a branch, every rustle in the underbrush, sends shivers down his spine. The trees, once simply part of the background, now loom over him like silent, ancient sentinels, guarding something unseen. As he sets up by the water, a thick fog begins to roll in from the river, creeping along the ground like fingers stretching toward him. The fog swirls unnaturally, almost alive, as if it's beckoning him closer to the water's edge. The river, once calm and inviting, now feels like a black void, reflecting nothing but the cold, starless sky above. Despite the stillness, there's a strange pull to this place, as though it's whispering to him, luring him deeper into its embrace. And then, from the depths of the fog, he notices something, faint at first, barely aglow. A light, a lantern, moving slowly along the opposite shore, just visible through the mist. But something isn't right. The light isn't swaying like a lantern carried by a person. It moves with an unsettling precision, straight and unwavering, as if being dragged by an invisible force. The protagonist freezes, watching in silence, his heart pounding in his chest. The light moves closer to the water's edge, closer, and then, without warning, it sinks beneath the surface, swallowed by the river. No splash, no ripples. The water remains perfectly still, as though it has devoured the light hole. The chill of the night deepens, and the river, once a source of tranquility, now feels like a gateway to something much darker. It starts innocently enough, as all horrors do. The protagonist, still shaken by the lantern's mysterious disappearance, tries to shake off the uneasy feeling creeping up his spine. He tells himself it must have been a trick of the light, perhaps the mist playing games with his mind. Yet, deep down, a gnawing fear lingers. The night feels alive, the silence deafening. As he tries to refocus on his surroundings, subtle things begin to happen. First, it's the sound, faint at first, like footsteps crunching on the gravel nearby. But every time he turns, there's no one there. The sound stops abruptly, as though whatever made it is aware it's being watched. Then, the temperature shifts. A sudden, unnatural chill wraps around him, as if the warmth has been drained from the air itself. He rubs his arms, trying to shake off the cold, but it seeps deeper into his bones. His breath fogs in front of him, thick and swirling, despite it being a warm evening. It's as though the river itself is exhaling, its breath damp and heavy, laced with something ancient, something malevolent. He scans the area, but everything seems normal at a glance, except for the feeling of being watched, like a pair of unseen eyes is fixed on him from just beyond the edge of the trees, lurking in the shadows where the light from his lantern doesn't reach. And then it happens. Out of the corner of his eye, he sees movement, not from the trees or the bushes, but from the water itself. At first, he dismisses it as a fish, but then the ripples take shape, unnatural and deliberate. Slowly, the water seems to rise, as if something is pushing up from below. The surface bulges, forming an unsettling shape, like fingers pressing against a veil, trying to break through. His heart races, and a cold sweat breaks out on his forehead. He grips his lantern tighter, pointing it toward the disturbance, but as soon as the light hits the spot, the water flattens out, perfectly still once more. He takes a step back, the unease growing into full-blown fear. His mind races with the possibility that he isn't alone. Whatever made that light vanish into the water, it's still here. The surroundings seem to close in on him, the once open space by the riverbank now feeling claustrophobic, as if the fog and darkness are closing in, suffocating him. The wind picks up, but it doesn't move the trees or the grass. Only the fog, swirling unnaturally around him, forming shapes that almost resemble figures before dissipating into the night. The feeling of being watched intensifies. He spins around, scanning the trees, the river, the path he came from, but nothing appears. Nothing he can see, at least. Then, from behind him, comes a soft splash, like something breaking the surface of the water. He spins again, lantern shaking in his hand. The river is empty still, but now in the back of his mind, he knows something is here. Something ancient, patient, and far beyond his understanding. And it's watching him. The protagonist stands frozen, his mind spinning in a whirlpool of fear and disbelief. Every instinct screams for him to leave, to run as fast as he can away from this place. But something darker, more sinister, keeps him rooted to the spot. There's a strange pull in the air, a magnetic force that makes it impossible for him to simply walk away. The logical part of his brain urges him to turn back, to ignore what he's seen, and chalk it up to exhaustion or stress. After all, who would believe such a story? But then, a different thought creeps in, quieter, yet far more compelling. What if this is his only chance to discover the truth? What if, by leaving now, he misses the chance to solve a mystery that no one else has dared to face? His heart pounds in his chest, and every beat feels like a countdown to some unknown fate. The fear grows sharper with each second, yet so does the curiosity. The inexplicable events, the vanishing lantern, the eerie figures forming in the fog, the water behaving as though it's alive, call to him. They whisper, teasing him with the promise of answers, no matter how terrifying they might be. He can feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him, like a vice. The dread of staying battles with the dread of leaving. But the truth is, he knows deep down that the terror will follow him either way. He could flee, but this place, this presence, it would haunt him forever. He hesitates for what feels like an eternity, staring into the depths of the river as if the answers lie somewhere beneath its surface. His hand trembles as he grips his lantern, its light flickering, barely piercing through the thickening fog. He takes a deep breath, trying to steady his racing thoughts, but the choice becomes clearer with each passing moment. He can either be the person who turned his back on the unknown, or the one who dared to face it head-on. The unknown is terrifying, yes. But what if the real horror is never knowing? Summoning every ounce of courage, he makes his decision. He won't run. He can't. He'll face whatever is out there, lurking in the darkness, no matter the cost. Stepping cautiously toward the water's edge, he feels the weight of the night pressing down on him. The shadows seem to thicken, growing darker, more oppressive, as if aware of his choice. He shines his lantern over the water, where the mysterious light had disappeared earlier, and for a brief moment, nothing happens. The air is still. The river remains calm, but the tension builds, coiling tighter and tighter, like a snake ready to strike. Suddenly, a sound, a low, guttural noise, emerges from the depths, making his skin crawl. It's not the sound of an animal or the wind. It's something far more unnatural, something that feels wrong. He freezes, his heart pounding in his throat. But instead of backing away, he takes another step closer. The decision has been made. He will confront whatever is hiding in the shadows of this cursed place, even though every fiber of his being tells him to flee. In this moment, the line between bravery and foolishness blurs, but it no longer matters. He has chosen his path, and now, there's no turning back. The air grows colder, impossibly so, as if the warmth has been drained from the very earth. His breath fogs in front of him, swirling in the eerie silence. The protagonist steps closer to the water's edge, every nerve in his body screaming in protest, but his legs move almost involuntarily, as though guided by something unseen. The river, once a tranquil escape, now feels alive, like it's watching him, waiting for him to make a mistake. His lantern flickers, casting long, distorted shadows that seem to twist and move on their own, as if mocking his every step. His fingers tighten around the handle of the lantern, his knuckles white with fear, but he pushes forward, refusing to let the terror consume him. Then, from the depths of the river, a shape begins to form. At first, it's nothing more than a ripple, a disturbance in the otherwise still water. But as he watches, frozen in place, the ripple grows. Something is rising from the water, slow and deliberate. The surface bulges as though the river itself is swelling. And then, suddenly, a hand breaks through, pale and dripping, its fingers long and unnaturally thin. His heart stops. It's not human. The hand moves with an unnatural grace, as if testing the air, feeling for something. Then another hand emerges, followed by the top of a head, soaked in water, but wrong. There's no hair, no face, just a smooth, featureless surface, like a mannequin crafted by some twisted artist. He wants to scream, to turn and run, but his body is paralyzed by terror. The figure continues to rise from the river, its form becoming more defined with each agonizing second. It's tall, too tall, its limbs unnaturally long, moving with a slow, deliberate precision. As the water drips from its body, it doesn't make a sound, not a splash, not a ripple, as though it doesn't truly belong in this world. The figure stands at the water's edge now, facing him, though it has no eyes to see. His breath catches in his throat, and for a moment, he swears he can hear a voice, whispering, faint but unmistakable, calling his name. It steps forward, its movements slow but purposeful. With each step, the ground beneath him seems to tremble ever so slightly, as if the very earth is recoiling from this thing. He feels its presence more than he sees it. It's overwhelming, suffocating, as though the air has become thick with something dark and ancient. His mind races, struggling to comprehend what he's seeing, but there's no logic here, only the cold, hard truth that he's not alone. Whatever this thing is, it's not human, and it's not of this world. It came from the river, drawn by something he can't understand, and now it's here, standing before him, waiting. The figure moves closer, its faceless head tilting slightly, as though observing him, measuring him. His lantern flickers wildly, casting erratic shadows across the ground, but the light seems to have no effect on the creature. It stops mere feet away, its presence heavy, oppressive. For a moment, There's a stillness, so complete it feels as though time itself has frozen. And then, without warning, the figure lunges. Its long, spindly arms reach out, impossibly fast, and the protagonist stumbles back, falling to the ground. The lantern slips from his hand, the light flickering out as it hits the dirt. Darkness swallows him whole, and all he can feel is the icy touch of the creature's hand as it grips his ankle, pulling him toward the water. His heart races, his mind consumed by sheer panic. He kicks, thrashes, desperate to free himself from its grip. But the creature's strength is unnatural, unyielding. The cold seeps through his skin, freezing him from the inside out. He can feel the water lapping at his feet, rising higher as the creature drags him closer to the river's edge. The whispers grow louder now, incomprehensible but insistent, filling his mind with a cacophony of voices. He tries to scream, but no sound escapes his throat. The river awaits, its dark, hungry depths calling to him. This is it, he realizes. This is where it ends. But then, just as suddenly as it began, the grip loosens. The figure retreats, its faceless head tilting once more as if in contemplation. And then, without a sound, it sinks back into the river, disappearing beneath the surface as though it was never there. The water goes still again, the fog thickens, and the night returns to its oppressive silence. He lies there, gasping for breath, his body trembling with shock. The terror lingers, gnawing at the edges of his mind, but the creature is gone. For now, the protagonist lies motionless on the damp ground, his body shaking from the sheer terror of what just happened. His mind races, trying to process the nightmare he's just endured. The figure, that grotesque and unnatural thing, had him within its grasp, ready to pull him into the icy depths of the river. But then, inexplicably, it let him go. Why? As his heart pounds in his chest, he stumbles to his feet, every nerve on edge, terrified that the creature might re-emerge at any moment. The river remains still, but the weight of the unknown presses heavily on him. There's a truth here, something lurking beneath the surface of the water, ancient and malevolent. And whatever it is, it wants something from him. As he stands there, he begins to notice details he hadn't seen before. The fog seems thicker now, almost solid, swirling around him like a living thing. Shadows move within it, fleeting and indistinct, but always watching. The whispers, faint and distant at first, grow louder in his mind, as though a chorus of voices from beyond the grave is trying to communicate with him. They speak in fragmented words, broken sentences, but one thing is clear. This river is cursed. It's not just a body of water. It's a portal, a gateway to something far darker than he could have ever imagined. The creatures that dwell within it are not from this world. They are drawn here, feeding on the fear of those who dare to come too close. Suddenly, it all clicks. The vanishing lantern, the footprints that led nowhere, the rising leaves. It's all connected. The river is a trap, a lure, pulling unsuspecting victims toward it with promises of tranquility, only to consume them in the end. He wasn't the first to see the light, and he won't be the last. The lantern he saw wasn't just a strange occurrence. It was a warning, a remnant of someone who had been here before. Someone who had been claimed by the river, dragged into its depths, never to return. And now, that same fate nearly befell him. But why did the creature let him go? The realization dawns on him with a chill that runs down his spine. It wasn't mercy. It wasn't an accident. The thing in the river let him go because it wasn't finished with him yet. This was only the beginning. It had marked him, chosen him, and it would return for him when the time was right. The thought is almost too much to bear. He can feel the weight of that dark presence, still lingering in the air, watching him, waiting. His time will come, just like all the others before him. The river never forgets. As he backs away from the water, the whispers fade, but the oppressive silence that follows is even more terrifying. He knows, without a doubt, that this place is cursed, haunted by something far beyond human comprehension. The river may look peaceful, but beneath its surface lies a darkness that cannot be reasoned with, cannot be escaped. He's lucky to have survived this encounter, but deep down, he knows the truth. No one truly escapes the river. Its grasp is far-reaching, its hunger insatiable. The creature may have retreated for now, but it will never stop watching, never stop waiting. As he gathers his things, his hands trembling, he vows never to return to this place. But even as he turns to leave, the unease remains. The air feels heavy, as though the river is still watching him, still whispering its dark promises. He feels it in his bones, that cold, unshakable certainty that no matter where he goes, no matter how far he runs, the river will always be a part of him now. It has marked him, and one day, it will call him back. Whether it's tomorrow, next week, or years from now, he knows that he won't be able to resist. The river will have him, just as it has taken others before. And so, with one last glance at the still, dark water, he turns and walks away, leaving the cursed river behind. But as he disappears into the night, the fog thickens once more, and the water ripples ever so slightly, as if in anticipation. The creature beneath the surface waits patiently, knowing that it will feed again soon. For those marked by the river never truly escape. The terror follows them wherever they go, creeping into their dreams, pulling them back, until finally they return and disappear into the depths forever. The protagonist doesn't know it yet, but this isn't the end. The river is patient. It always gets what it wants. And next time, there will be no escape. As the protagonist stumbles away from the river, each step feels like he's being pulled in two directions. One part of him is desperate to flee, to put as much distance between himself and that cursed place as possible. But another part of him, a darker, quieter part, knows that leaving won't make a difference. The river, that entity lurking beneath the water, has already marked him. Its pull is not physical, but psychological, a deep, inescapable connection that he now carries with him. Even as he walks away, the feeling of being watched doesn't fade. It follows him, creeping behind him like a shadow that can't be outrun. His surroundings seem different now, as if the world itself has shifted. The trees, once familiar and comforting, now loom over him like silent witnesses to the horrors he's seen. Every gust of wind through the leaves feels like a whisper, like the river calling him back. He quickens his pace, heart pounding, but the fear clings to him, digging its icy claws deeper with every step. He tells himself it's over, that he's escaped, but deep down, he knows better. This isn't over. It will never be over. Back in town, days pass, but the experience haunts him. At first, he tries to return to his normal life, convincing himself that what he saw was just his mind playing tricks. But the nightmares start almost immediately. Every night, the same vision. The river, calm and dark, with something rising from its depths, faceless and terrifying. He sees the lantern flickering faintly on the opposite shore and hears the whispers, those endless, maddening whispers. They call to him, beckoning him back to the water. He wakes up drenched in sweat, his heart racing, but the terror never fully fades. Even in the daylight, the memories cling to him like a second skin. People begin to notice the change in him. He's quieter, more withdrawn, constantly looking over his shoulder as if expecting something to appear from the shadows. He avoids the river, but it doesn't matter. The river has found a way into his mind, and it won't let go. Every time he closes his eyes, he's back there, standing at the edge of the water, the cold fog swirling around him, the presence looming just beneath the surface. He tries to tell himself it's just trauma, that he's imagining things, but he can feel it, always lurking, always watching. One evening, as the sun sets and the shadows lengthen, he hears it again, the whispers. At first, they're faint, just a trickle of sound at the edge of his awareness. But as the night deepens, they grow louder, more insistent. He tries to ignore them, burying his head in his hands, but they won't stop. They never stop. They seem to come from everywhere and nowhere, echoing in his mind, pulling him back to the river. He feels the same strange pull he felt that night, the same unnatural compulsion. It's as if the river itself is reaching out to him, demanding his return. Against his better judgment, he finds himself walking. He doesn't know why or how, but his feet carry him toward the very place he swore never to visit again. The streets are eerily quiet, the world around him dim and distorted, as if reality itself is bending to the river's will. By the time he reaches the water's edge, the whispers are deafening. The fog is thick, curling around him like ghostly fingers, and the river is as still as death. He stands there, staring at the dark water, and for a moment, nothing happens. Then, from the depths, the lantern appears again. It's the same flickering light, moving slowly across the surface, just as it had before. But this time, he knows better. This time, he knows what's coming. He tries to turn, to run, but his body refuses to move. He's paralyzed, frozen in place, as the light draws closer, until it's hovering right in front of him. The whispers intensify, filling his mind with an unbearable noise. The light wavers, flickers, and then disappears beneath the water. But this time, it doesn't stop there. The water begins to churn, the surface bubbling as something rises from the depths once again. He watches, helpless, as the same faceless figure emerges, its long, spindly arms reaching for him. The fear is overwhelming, suffocating, but there's nowhere to run. The river has claimed him, just as it has claimed so many others before. He feels the icy grip of the creature on his ankle once more, pulling him toward the water. But this time, there's no escape. With one final, desperate scream, he is dragged beneath the surface, swallowed whole by the river's dark embrace. The water closes over him, and the night falls silent once more. The river remains still, calm, as though nothing had happened. The fog drifts lazily across the surface, hiding the horrors that lurk beneath. And somewhere, deep in the shadows, the whispers continue, waiting for the next soul to wander too close. The river is quiet now. Its dark surface betrays no sign of what transpired, as if the night itself has swallowed the terror that unfolded. Days pass, and the protagonist's disappearance becomes just another whisper in the town, a faint echo of something everyone is too afraid to acknowledge. People talk about him in hushed tones, speculating about what could have happened. Some say he must have run away, driven mad by some unseen trauma. Others suggest he simply drowned, a tragic accident in the dead of night. But there are those who know better, those who have heard the rumors, seen the strange lights by the river, and they fear the truth, that he was taken by something far worse than the water. His belongings are found scattered near the riverbank, his fishing gear, a broken lantern, and the deep, uneven tracks in the mud, as if he had been dragged. But there's no sign of him. It's as if he vanished without a trace, pulled into the river by an invisible hand. The authorities search for a few days, but they find nothing. Eventually, they stop looking. The river has claimed another, just as it always has. No one dares linger there after dark now. Even in daylight, the place feels wrong, as if it's haunted by the memories of those who have disappeared. For the protagonist, wherever he is, the terror never ends. He's trapped, caught between worlds, unable to escape the river's grasp. In his mind, the scene plays over and over. The faceless figure, the cold grip of its hand pulling him down, the suffocating darkness of the water closing over his head. He can still hear the whispers, louder now, more insistent. They tell him things, terrible things about the river and its hunger, about the others it has taken, the souls it keeps trapped beneath its surface, unable to move on. The river is not just a place. It's a living entity, a force that feeds on fear, on lives cut short. And now, he is part of it. But the river's reach extends far beyond the water. The town, once a place of safety, is now marked by its presence. People feel it, even if they don't speak of it. There's an unspoken rule now. Never go near the river at night. Never follow the light. But the whispers persist, drawing in the curious, the brave, the reckless. The river waits, patient, knowing it will claim another soon. It always does. The fog rolls in heavier some nights, thick and impenetrable, and with it come the faint glimmers of lanterns along the water's edge. Sometimes people see them, just for a moment, before the lights disappear, swallowed by the depths. The protagonist's story becomes one of many, a cautionary tale that blends into the local folklore. People avoid talking about it openly, but late at night, in hushed tones, they speak of the river and the things that dwell within it. They say that if you stand by the river at midnight, you can still hear the faint echoes of his last scream, carried by the wind, before the water claimed him. They say the fog never fully lifts now, lingering just a little too long, always swirling around the river, as if protecting its dark secret. And yet, the river still calls. It pulls at the edges of people's minds, tempting them to look, to seek, to find out what lies beneath. The protagonist is gone, but his story remains, a haunting reminder that some places are meant to be left undisturbed. He will never return, but his presence lingers, an unseen shadow that creeps along the riverbank, felt but never seen. The water remains still, its surface betraying nothing, but beneath it, the terror festers. As you sit here, watching, ask yourself, would you be tempted? Would you follow the light? Would you dare to confront the darkness hidden within the depths? Or would you turn and run, hoping to escape the river's gaze? The truth is, it's already too late. The river knows your name. It's waiting, patiently, for you to come closer. You might think you're safe, but the whispers, they'll find you. They always do.